So who, what I get from the fact that you were listening to a lot of Brand Nubian tells me that you were into political conscious rap, right? And like Brand Nubian was like the less cuddly, friendly, alternative to people like the Jungle Brothers.
Black is black is black is black. Way back when in '68, brothers didn't have it great. They brought back the civil rights and scarred his soul. It took its life to common foe, you plainly see. All the streets are on TV. Segregation was the king. Vietnam was full in swing. Martin Luther had to shout, blast, get out, get out, get out. The situation sort of changed, but what really makes matters strange is our foe is well disguised. We don't know where our fate lies. Still in all we cannot lack the fact that black is black is black.
Who were also doing, Afrocentric culture, but like Brand Nubian was, considerably more strident in their politics.
Yeah, but it's funny. I remember these people being like so much more radical and everything, but when I listen now, it's like to a lot of, because I was trying to put together stuff for this appearance, and I was drawing like a lot of blanks, and then I'd play things that I remembered being political, but they kind of had an angry pose and very, upset. But most of what they were really talking about wasn't really coherent anti-establishment politics so much as like a general like malaise with the status quo and authority and preaching, racial self-esteem,
Right.
which in its own way is pretty radical. But there was no real like some things like the coup, be talking about like, socialism and anti-capitalism and
I'm anti-imperial, anti-trust, anti-gun if the shit won't bust, anti-corporate day, anti-my essence, anti-snorting them, anti-depressants, but I'm not pro-popping them. I'm provocative and pro-stopping them FBI operatives who pro-sectional the black man pounds and hand you a sentence that you can't pronounce. I'm also anti-narco, anti-vice, 911 wants the anti-Christ, they anti-social point M16, cause I'm anti the anti-nigga machine, proletarian, funkadelic, parliamentarian, pro-revolt in the 21st century, pro-running up in Congress saying fuck it all, but bring the people with you, that's the protocol. It's pretty joyful like jailbreaks. The whole world is anti-United Snakes, so check it out, anticipate the antivenom, and move your antibody to this revolution rhythm. We gon' be fucking with them, pro-union, but most laws they bite. Anti-motherfuckers crossing the strike. Take a look around and be for or against, but you can't do shit if you riding the fence. Ride the fence. Now you don't really wanna ride the fence. Now do you really wanna ride the fence? Or would you really wanna ride the fence? Don't ride the fence.
there were actual like political organizers and stuff. Yeah, so they kind of had a little more political coherence. But when I was re-listening to a lot of stuff to talk about politics today, I was like, actually, this is not really that political. Like, there's no real coherent politics really in Brand Nubian.
Right. What about
Outside of
KRS?
just even KRS, he was more into political. I mean, you might remember something that will, differ than what I'm remembering, but I remember him being like super political and everything. And then when I re-listened to him, a lot of it just kind of, I mean, I put it in the list, but like when I listen to like My Philosophy, I remember thinking like, yo, that's just a real deep song. And I listen, and it's a great song, but there's no real politics you can walk away from it with, really,
No, that's not a political song. I mean, that song is a statement of, I am here and I'm cornering the market on excellence in hip hop, and all of you like it's a demonstration.
Yo, cause I'm a teacher and Scott is a scholar. It ain't about money cause we all make dollars. That's why I walk with my head up. When I hear whack rhymes, I get fed up. Rap is like a setup, a lot of games, a lot of suckers with colorful names. I'm so and so, I'm this, I'm that, but they all just whack. I'm not white or red or black, I'm brown. From the boogie down, productions, of course, our music be thumping. Others say they're bad, but they're bugging.
Kind of like Rakim was, but Rakim was a little more low-key about it. I mean, he didn't call himself the teacher.
Yeah.
KRS is very, he shows and proves with a lot of gusto.
Yeah, but for some reason, I remember him just being like way more political. I mean, the most political thing I could remember really was he had one song about um drug dealers, like black criminals, stuff, such and such. If you're going to sell drugs, at least form a mafia. y- you know, which was an interesting political message. You know,
Black drug dealer, you have to rise up and organize your business so that we can rise up. If you give us all that, then don't be a fool. Organize your business and open up a store. Drug dealer.
then verse one is like drug dealer, understand historical fact. Every race got ahead from selling drugs except black. We are under attack. Here comes another cold fact. In the 30s and 40s, a drug dealer wasn't black. They were Jewish, Italian, Irish, Polish, etc., etc. Now in 90, their lives are a lot better. I mean, I think it's interesting theory is also to say that drug dealing put everybody on top. I mean, someone could say like, you know, the Kennedys, and if you consider alcohol a drug, and you know, I know the Kennedys are bootlegging, and
Sure.
you know, people were using opium to weaponize against, you know, China. I mean, I think it's an oversimplification to say that every race got ahead for selling drugs, but I think there is probably like a mix of truth in it, in that, you know, a lot of people did start off. A lot of people who are legitimate today did start off getting their money in crime.
Yeah, well, essentially what he's talking about is organize, you know, like whatever you're going to do it in an organized way. And that's, in a sense, a political message. I mean, a lot of his stuff, I remember what was, see, again, you know, it depends on who's listening. So I was a lefty Jewish kid from Western Canada, or in Western Canada, without much exposure to Black culture, not a lot of Afro-Canadians in Vancouver at the time. Toronto always had, as I spoke about with Andre Domis, like Toronto always had a strong Black community coming from the Caribbean and other places. Vancouver was less diverse back then. And so, you know, first of all, the rap that I heard on the radio to start out with would be like holiday rap, that ridiculous song, that's the first song I tried to remember, by MC Micro G and DJ Sven.
Oh, I never even heard of that.
Oh yeah. They rap over Madonna, the groove to Madonna's song
We're
Holiday.
gonna ring rang-a-dong for a holiday. Mike and Ding and Sven, we're here to stay. We're gonna ring rang-a-dong for a holiday. Hey, check out the new style we just played.
We are going on a summer holiday. If you want to go, you'll Sven. We go into London and New York City, and we take a little piece of Amsterdam, right?
But they were Dutch.
Okay.
Well, it's ridiculous. They're Dutch, and it's I'll put a clip in here so when you watch the episode, you can reference it. You can see what I'm talking about. But really, then Young MC, Tone Loc, the stuff, and Fresh Prince, stuff that got on the radio. But I also happened to go to a Jewish summer camp that was like a lefty socialist, also Zionist, but that's a whole different conversation. But you know, it modeled on the kibbutz kind of way of life, and a lot of like cool progressive lefty counselors would come from the East Coast to like work there. And I had one counselor who would wake us up in the morning by blasting on his boombox, KRS screaming,
Wake up! Take the pillow from your head and put a book in it. It's time for the massive BDP crew.
and you know, and then you must learn, and like listening to this like prophetic voice spitting facts about the Bible and the genealogy of Shem.
Genesis chapter 11 verse 10 explains the genealogy of Shem. Shem was a black man in Africa. If you repeat this fact, they can't laugh at you. Genesis 14 verse 13. Abraham steps on the scene. Being a descendant of Shem, which is a fact, means Abraham too was black. Abraham was the father of Isaac. Isaac was the father of Jacob. Jacob had 12 sons for real, and these were the children of Israel.
It's very powerful to me, partly because of the unfamiliarity of it, but also because it was such an antidote to the anodyne radio friendliness of all the rap I had heard so far. It was actually saying something, and it was saying something urgently to the listener.
Yeah. I mean, when I was going through a lot of the rap that I remember being political, it had, even though a lot of it didn't really have as coherent a politics as I remember it. I think it was political in terms of what it was documenting,
Hmm.
like what it really was doing. That one could argue is political was that it was just kind of um, giving you a window to how a lot of people were living
Hmm.
out there. So you can't say it was particularly socialist or it had any type of political prescriptions or deep analysis as to what got people there. But there was a lot of great painting a picture of how people were living on the other side of the track, so to speak. So in that
Yeah.
respect, I would say a lot of this stuff held up as political. I just for some reason remembered more, I guess, um, analysis and prescriptions that kind of really weren't there when I re-listened to a lot of it.
No, I think you're right. I think the political statement is, well, so number one, just giving a voice to the voiceless, right? Like
Yeah.
number two, like you think of a song like Cream.
Cash rules everything around me. Cream, get the money. Dollar, dollar bill, yo.
That's a very political observation. They're not just talking about, it's not, that song is not about greed or materialism. It's about survival, the attitude that you need to adopt to survive at the bottom rungs of a capitalist system, which is basically to replicate the ethos of the system, but try to make it work for you. And it's, to me, Cream never sounded like a celebration. There's something, it's a lament.
Also the press, and I ask, what's your work? Ready to give up, so I seek the old earth. Who explain working hard may help you maintain. To learn to overcome the heartaches and pain. You got stick up kids, corrupt cops, and crack rocks and stray shots. All in a block that stays hot. Leave it up to me while I be living proof. To kick the truth to the young black youth. When shorties running wild, smoking cess, drinking beer. And ain't trying to hear what I'm kicking in his ear. Neglected for now, but yo, it got to be accepted. That what? The life is hectic. Cash rules everything around me. Cream, get the money.
So to me, there's something kind of political in that, highlighting the paradoxes. And then just quite aside from that, like just, yeah, giving young black men, like one of the most maligned and not really fully understood or considered as fully human sectors in society, like exposing people coming out as geniuses basically left and right. Like it was just an era of total, complete brilliance and innovation. And there's something in itself, I guess, potentially political about that. But then of course the record companies get their hands on it and it can go in a different direction.
And also, to be fair to a lot of rap groups, is in recent years, you have seen more and more political rap that has come out with more advanced theory and more prescriptive stances. And to be honest, a lot of it just doesn't sound good. like I think it just ends up kind of sounding a little didactic and preachy. Like like it's hard to pull off. So it's probably better that they did it the way that they did it a lot of the time, because when I did manage to come across some rap with more advanced political theory, it was not really, I mean, it worked as a message, but it didn't really work as music, And at the end of the day, it's still supposed to be music, it still has to work as a song.
Yeah. I mean, a song like Reagan by Killer Mike, I think it works because it's not political theory, it's history.
The end of the Reagan era. I'm like Lemma 12, old enough to understand the shit that changed forever. They declared the war on drugs, like a war on terror. But what it really did was let the police terrorize whoever. But mostly black boys, but they would call us niggas and lay us on our belly while they fingers on their triggers. They boots was on our head, they dogs was on our crotches, and they would beat us up if we had diamonds on our watches. And they would take our drugs and monies as they pick our pockets. I guess that's the privilege of policing for some profit. But thanks to Reaganomics, prison turned to profits. Cause free labor's the cornerstone of U.S. economics.
He makes it personal. He talks about where he was at the receiving end of Reaganomic politics, policies at the hands of police and all that, but weaving in CIA, bringing in drugs and all this. Like, I think it's a very effective piece of political hip hop, which doesn't always happen when you try to get explicitly political.
I just thought of two by Public Enemy that I thought were Like there was Fight the Power, which
Yeah.
I haven't re-listened to before coming on, but I remember that one um being very energizing. But Burn Hollywood Burn, I
Mm.
thought was very kind of ahead of its time.
Burn, Hollywood, burn. I smell a riot going on. First the guilty, now they're gone. Yeah, I'll check out a movie, but it'll take a black one to move me. Get me the hell away from this TV. All the news and views are beneath me. So all I hear about is shots ringing out about gangs putting each other's head out. So I'd rather kick some slang out. All right, fellas, let's go hang out. Hollywood, or would they not make us all look bad like I know they had? But some things I'll never forget, yeah. So step and fetch this shit. For all the years we looked like clowns, the joke is over. Smell the smoke from all around.
Because now people talk about representation so much, and it's such a big part of, to the point people arguably talk about it almost too much. Some people would argue, but at the time, not that many people were going on about um representation that much as they are now.
Yeah, and I think I actually think he was going beyond representation in that song. He wasn't just talking about black faces. He's talking about the kind of ideology that you're being sold by all these white faces, right? And so I doubt he'd be too impressed with like just, putting a more diverse spin on the same old treacly bullshit about America and about romantic love and all of the, all the garbage that they decried on She Watched Channel Zero, the stuff that's making you blind to the facts.
You're blind, baby. You're blind from the facts on who you are because you're watching that garbage.
It was more than
that's a good one too.
It is good, and so is Black Steel in the Hour of Chaos, right? A jailbreak, but it doesn't start out about a jailbreak. It starts about draft dodging or like refusing to serve in the army.
I got a letter from the government the other day. I opened and read it. It said they were suckers. They wanted me for their army or whatever. Picture me giving a damn. I said never. Here's a land that never gave a damn about a brother like me and myself because they never did. I wasn't with it, but just that very minute it occurred to me. The suckers had authority.
And I think something else that makes Burn Hollywood Burn bigger than the conversation today is there's a part, where they go like, so let's make our own movies like Spike Lee, because the roles being offered don't strike me as nothing that black men can use to earn. Burn Hollywood Burn. And it's like they were talking about creating like their own movies and their own industry, which I feel like is something that has been taken out of the conversation. Like people just want like a seat at the big boys table, like they don't want to do their own independent black show. They want to have a black show on a big streaming platform, and win white awards. That's very much a part of it that Public Enemy was trying to think bigger than, like this idea of whether it's realistic or not. Someone might argue it's not realistic in these days because even the big movie companies can't be profitable, so what can a small one do? But it was cool that Public Enemy had that conversation about, let's not just beg for roles and beg for white people to give us respectful roles. Let's make our own.
I was a bit remedial getting into hip hop. Like for me, like most middle-class Jewish kids, it was the Beastie Boys, which then through Q-Tip led me to A Tribe Called Quest, which led me to, De La Soul, Jungle Brothers, Diggable Planets, who actually, you want to talk about politics, Diggable Planets' second album, Blowout Comb, is hella political.
Very much so.
One time for your mind, two times for Maria say cool. Jonesing on the curb, I glow, still posing in B-girl, freshest, this leftist gets loud. I got raised by the dim street lights of 4 cities. My heroes died in prison, George Jackson.
I'm left this year on long player. In my vein lives bell hooks, Derek Bell, Reg Butler.
When I'm in the boogie, I'm imported. I study Chairman Mao. Ain't nothing but Brooklyn in my plasma now. I do my like Huey with a nigga.
I think it was a little too advanced, honestly.
Oof.
It was ahead of its time, that album.
Amazing album. It's one of my favorite hip hop albums. It's one of my favorite albums, period.
I feel like a lot of even like people into conscious stuff back then, they kind of liked a lot of that pseudo Pan Africanist stuff. So I think a lot of even the so-called conscious crowd, it didn't really even like that album because it was a little too concrete. You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
because like I said, a lot of the so-called like woke or conscious stuff was really I hate to say it, but a lot of it was kind of like this kind of pro-black magical thinking thing happening. You know, people talking about going back to Africa and all this different stuff, and what Diggable Plans was talking about with, or it was like just aesthetic bohemian stuff like grow your dreads and
Mm-hmm.
wear a dashiki and get your African medallion, like but it was nothing really. It was a kind of self-esteem type based stuff, but
Right.
talking about Chairman Mao and all that stuff for a lot of us that was, I think, a little heavy, and I won't say we didn't like it, but we just didn't fully appreciate it, and what they were talking about on that. Like that was um pretty good stuff. Then I think people like Common and Most Def and a lot of those people, even though they get like a lot of props for being so political, I don't think they go as deep as Blowout Comb did personally.
No, and Common backed off. I mean, Common got into a pretty um, feel good groove after a while. Like
Yeah.
that, it very much was about, I think, the kind of pride you could market,
Yeah.
and that you could affiliate with a political party or a political, you know, mainstream. I mean,
Stuff you could put on T-shirts.
stuff you could put on T-shirts, stuff you could make a movie career out of.
Yeah.
Which is sad to me because I loved when he was Common Sense, Resurrection. I loved that album. There was none of that. It was just a scrappy kid from Chicago. When he guested on De La Soul's song, The Business, I was like, man, this guy's nice.
Yeah, but I feel like even at his best, he was just never really serious about politics. I mean,
No, sure.
the most I think he really cared about was the commercialization of hip hop. I think that's the most
Sure.
he had a coherent ideology on
Always
anything.
smoking blunts and getting drunk. Telling me sad stories. Now she only fucks with the funk. Stressing how hardcore and real she is. She was really the realest before she got into showbiz. I did her, not just to say I did it, but I'm committed. But so many niggas hit it that she's just not the same. Letting all these goofies do her. I see niggas slamming her and taking it to the sewer. But I'ma take her back, hoping that the shit stop. Cause who I'm talking about, y'all, is hip hop. Hip hop, hip hop, hip hop.
But as far as like actual like you know black politics, I think he was mostly about slam poetry and a groove and a look. You know what I mean? Like I don't think
Yeah.
he really.
Well,
Yeah.
he had a song or two about poverty on Resurrection, but of course, you can only be poor for so long if you're going to be a big star. Back to Blow It Comb
True.
for a second. I also wonder if they were hurt by the fact, well, two facts. Number one, the album is very subtle. You have to really listen closely to what they're saying. It's
Yeah.
not it's not in your face at all, and the grooves are very mellow. You wouldn't think necessarily that there's a lot of political statements going on. And then second, like I think people associated them with their first album, which was very bohemian, very like it's super beatnik, like quirky, like, oh, we're bugs from outer space.
And I think that was more like what Common does, where it's like it has like a bohemianish kind of feel, but the actual politics are kind of lightweight. It's a politics of aesthetics, whereas this, the second one, and I think that's easier to go over with a lot of like young college kids and high school kids, which is like what we were at the time. Yeah, so yeah, I agree with you there. I think people wanted more of that, and that wasn't that.
And that is it for part 2 of my conversation with T, aka Trevor Beaulieu of the Champagne Sharks podcast. In part 3, we're going to have some live reactions, at least on my part, to some tracks I'd never heard before, and both Trevor and I will talk about them. One is by the rapper Tragedy, who I only knew from his 90s output, but it turns out the Queensbridge rapper was making records way back in 86 with DJ Marley Marl and that whole crew out of Queens. So that was really interesting to listen to the origins of the Queensbridge sound, as it's called. We also took a listen to a crew out of Buffalo, New York that Trevor introduced me to. They're contemporary. They're still recording now, or at least they have been in the past 5 years. They're called Griselda, which I love as a name, and they're monstrously talented. It was really exciting to hear a crew so devoted to just the craft of writing fierce and fearsome bars. They're all super talented. There's also going to be a bonus episode in which Trevor and I, who are both, proud Gen Xers, or at least kind of somewhere between Gen X and Millennial, I guess, we take a listen to some Millennial and Gen Z hip hop and talk about it. Just talk about it from our grizzled perspective. Where is the art form at? And who are the luminaries? Who are the ones who are really forging an exciting path in our not so humble opinion? And Trevor goes off on his pet peeve of rappers these days kind of proudly displaying their aversion to effort and craft. So that's a really fun discussion. If you want to see it, you got to become a Patreon subscriber by going to patreon.com/lyrics2go, signing up at the $5 level or above per month, and you get all kinds of other great perks at that and a whole bunch of other subscription tiers. So I hope you will check that out. For now, I'm Daniel Maté saying I've got lyrics to go, and now you do too.
As I walk the streets of Hollywood Boulevard, thinking how hard it was for those who started the movies, portraying the roles of butlers and maids, slaves and hoes. Many intelligent black men seem to look uncivilized when on the screen. Like I guess I figure you should play some jigaboo on the plantation. What else can a nigga do? And black women in this profession, as for playing a lawyer, out of the question. For what they played, Aunt Your Mama is the perfect term. Even if now she got a perm. So let's make our own movies like Spike Lee. Cause the roles being offered don't strike me as nothing that the black man could use to earn. Burn Hollywood, burn.